Welcome back again to my second review for Re-Animator. Now don't freak out, I know what you're saying to yourself. Did I already see a review for Re-Animator? Well, no. It's because my crappy camera here decided to crap out when I was recording my first review for Re-Animator. And this camera is literally on its last legs. I have a video camera. It's a Samsung camera that I bought from Best Buy probably 4 years ago. And it's super simple. I mean, it's just like you turn it on, you push the button, and that's it. There's no frills, there's nothing exciting about this camera whatsoever. And now it's buzzing. You turn it on, and you might have heard it in some of these other reviews. The audio is going out on this camera. And I'm trying to get through horror month here before it completely goes out. And there's no way of me hearing the buzz because there's no input for headphones or anything when I'm recording this. So I'm just gonna hope that this recording isn't screwed up like my last recording. Alright, so let's jump into the Re-Animator box set from Arrow. Actually, it's not a box set, it's just the Re-Animator that looks like a big box because it is. It comes in a big box. So I'm not going to talk too much about the movie. I will tell you a little story that I have about it. And I'll talk a little bit about it, but not too much, because it's Re-Animator. Everybody knows Re-Animator. And if you don't know Re-Animator, then you need to go out and get this box set, or the box of Re-Animator, because there's only one movie. Well, there's two. But still, you need to watch it if you have never seen it. Okay, so my story is this. When this film first came out, I was too young to go see it in theater. Like a lot of horror films, I wanted to go see them, and I was pretty tall for my age even back then, and sometimes I could fake out a person at the box office. They would think I was older than what I was, and they wouldn't ask for my ID. But for the most part, I sometimes got lucky, got into a movie theater, and other times, most times, I didn't. And this was one of those occasions. So of course I was a big fan of Fangoria magazine, and this was all over Fangoria magazine. It showed all the disgusting, horrible, gross effects, and I had to go see it. And it looked amazing. So I go to the theater, and I had just watched Remo Williams. I don't know if anyone ever has remembered that film or not, but it was out the same time Re-Animator was, and I had literally, just like the day before, or like the week before, had gone and seen Remo Williams at this theater. So I'm like, I'm going to go here, and I'm going to buy a ticket for Remo Williams, and I'm going to sneak into Re-Animator and go see it, which is what I did. I bought a ticket to go see Remo, and then went to the door where, the theater where Re-Animator was showing, and they actually had two employees standing outside of the door checking your ticket when you went in there. That's how bad this movie was. And I was like, oh my god, that's epic. But I was pretty mad, obviously, I didn't get to go see it. So then about, I guess, 2 or 3 months later, it came to this dollar show that was right down the street from me, and my sister actually worked there. It was called the Kingsland, and they didn't care what I went to see. I went to see R-rated films there all the time, because they knew me, they knew my sister, and they knew I saw all these horror films all the time there. So when Re-Animator shows up at the Kingsland, I went there, and I actually had trouble seeing it there too. The person's like, I don't know, should we let him in to go see this? And I'm just like, oh my god, here we go. I'm going to have to wait for it to come on VHS. But then they actually let me in to go see it. And that's how I finally got to see this movie, was at the dollar show at the Kingsland down the street from me. And of course, it was amazing. It's incredible. And, I went to go see it for the blood and guts, but actually I found out this is a great story. They actually did a fantastic story here. And I have not seen this movie in a long time, so watching this Arrow version of it here, I was pretty excited to see it again. And coming away from it this time, I realized, and I should have realized this the first 100 times I've seen the movie, but it's actually pretty much a Frankenstein story. It's a retelling of Frankenstein, and it's amazing. It's absolutely incredible what they did here. All the effects and all the blood and all the guts and all the disgusting gross stuff still hold up today. it's still gross. It's still disgusting. And for those who have never seen it and are squeamish, they will be super squeamish watching this. There's really nothing in this movie that's like, oh, well, that's fake. Oh, look how bad that looks. Oh, that's so... There's none of that in this film, and it still holds up today as a great film. Great storytelling, good acting, and just overall great movie. And it's up there with some of the best zombie films and horror films of all time. And my favorite zombie film of all time is Return of the Living Dead, followed by the original Dawn of the Dead, and then probably this, Re-Animator. And it's up there with the top 3, I think, greatest zombie films ever. And getting to see this in the 4K restoration was pretty amazing. I mean, it really was. There's still a lot of grain in the film, and they could, digitally take the grain out, obviously, like they do in some of these films. But then the purists are like, oh, it's too clear, and it doesn't look like it should for the original. We want the grain. So there's grain in this movie still. But that's not to say that the colors aren't amazing, that the clarity of the picture is not that amazing. It is. Arrow did a spectacular job putting this onto Blu-ray. Absolutely amazing looking. So there's a lot of extras to get to on here, so I'm just going to jump right in and start on them. So first up, we have 3 commentaries. That's right, you heard me, 3 of them. And the first one is from the director himself, Stuart Gordon. And this is actually a really good commentary. He talks about how he started this organic theater, and I can't remember, I think it was in Chicago where he ended up at. And it was some sort of like risque type of weird stage shows that he would put on. And then while he was doing that, he thought to himself, all these people really deserve a movie. All these people really should have a film. And he was a big fan of horror films, particularly Frankenstein. He loved Frankenstein. And I think a friend of his mentioned Re-Animator. And so he went to the library and found HP Lovecraft's original writings for the Re-Animator. And it was a 3-part serial, I think. And he took all the 3 parts and obviously made them into one film. And this also was his first movie that he ever directed, which by watching this, you probably really could not tell because he did such a great job with this. And the entire film was filmed in 18 days. And if you watch this and see how good it is, it's like, wow. I mean, that's craziness. That's just ridiculous. Even today, even indie directors today would have a hard time directing something on this scale in 18 days. There was a lot of interesting things that he talked about in this commentary, which he ends up talking about again later on in the interviews. So there is a lot of repeating in this. There's a lot of him repeating himself over and over and over. So you will hear the same stories on the set, and you will hear the same stories, like, for example, the very first guy that Herbert West and Dan bring back from the dead is Arnold Schwarzenegger's body double from Terminator. And he talks about it in here, then they talk about it in the other commentary, and then I think they talk about it in the other commentary, then they talk about it on the... And it's like the same stuff you hear over and over and over and over. It's a really good, solid commentary. I enjoyed it from beginning to end. There's no pauses here. I mean, he talks straight through, and he gives you all the tidbits and the everything behind the scenes stuff and what it took to make this and how they made it. And it's a great commentary. Really, really good. The next commentary is actually from the entire cast, or just about the entire cast that was in the movie. Now, when I got to this commentary, again, I was like, okay, here we go again, and I wasn't that excited to watch the film again, but this, again, was a great commentary. Everybody who was involved with this movie and was watching this movie, they had a blast, and you could tell that because they were laughing through the entire thing and making fun of themselves. And there's a couple scenes where they had to dub their voices over, because I guess there was noises on the set, and the guy's like, "Yeah, listen to my voice. I love that ADR there. That's so great." And and obviously saying that it wasn't great. He was being sarcastic, and it was just a blast. This was so fun to listen to. The whole cast and crew just ripping this movie, but they also enjoyed it. I mean, they also really loved what they did. And it's funny, too, since it's a horror movie and it's all blood and guts and whatever, every time something like that happens, they'd all yell, "Oh my God, it's terrible!" And, I was like, okay, how many times have you guys seen this movie? But they would all yell and scream every time something bloody came up on the screen. So that was a lot of fun. And it was 10 years after they made it is when they did this commentary. So this was like a 10-year anniversary or whatever when this isn't new, I don't believe, for the Arrow. I think this has been around as long as the first one as well. These are just, coming from another source, I guess, another DVD that's been out or whatever. But yeah, but it was 10 years after they made the movie as they're sitting there watching it. And they constantly, again, you're going to hear me talk about this because they constantly talk about this, so you're going to hear me repeat it, is the fact that Dr. Hill was the guy that was hypnotizing everybody. And they said, well, there's this whole subplot here where Dr. Hill's hypnotizing everybody. And they cut it out, and it was never in the movie. And they kept talking about it. But they also talked about a lot of other scenes that they filmed that didn't make in the film, like certain dialogue sequences and other sequences and stuff like that. But all this stuff that they talked about in this commentary ended up in the other movie that's on here, the television movie. So I'm going to get to that at the end. But it was interesting hearing them talk about it and then watching it, and you're like, oh, here's all the scenes that they were talking about. And it kind of spoiled it a little bit, so be warned if you don't know any of the extra scenes or anything like that, don't watch this commentary because they will tell you everything that's in the television version of it. So again, a great commentary. I watched the whole thing from beginning to end and was really highly entertained because Stuart Gordon was more or less sort of this is how I made it, and these guys are just ripping the film, and they're just making fun of themselves and making fun of the movie and talking how much they enjoyed it, and it was such a blast actually listening to it. Completely enjoyed it. Now we get to the third commentary. Now, this was an interesting commentary, actually. And again, because of time, I didn't get to listen to the whole thing. But what I did listen to was pretty interesting. Apparently, they made a musical from Re-Animator. And the guys who played Dr. Hill and Herbert West were on this commentary, the singers. And they talked about how the whole thing came about and how the whole musical came about. And as they were talking about it, I'm just thinking to myself, man, I really would love to see it. It sounded so good. And they actually sang some of the songs during the commentary, and they were great, and they were upbeat, and they were fun, and they were funny, and these guys were great singers. But as far as I know, it's never really traveled outside of wherever they were. But if it ever came here to St. Louis, I would definitely go see it. So the actual first extra here on Re-Animator is basically the director getting on here and again repeating himself, mostly of what he said during the commentary. So if you want to watch this and not be like, oh, hey, I've heard this already, don't watch these commentaries, like I said. But if you're watching this fresh and you didn't watch that, you'd be really entertained because everything Stuart Gordon says is really good and entertaining if you haven't heard it 5 times already. But they did actually interview all the other actors and the special effects people and all the other people that were involved with the project. And it's a really good extra, excellent extra. Up next is what's just called Interviews, and it's an interview with Stuart Gordon and his producer. And this kind of reminded me of the extra that was in the Exorcist special edition that came out, where he was the director was just sitting there at a table talking to his producer or the writer or whatever it was. And this is about 50 minutes long, and they're just reminiscing about the film, talking to each other about, the organic theater. This is where Stuart Gordon came from and how he got involved with the movie and how he found the script to the original HP Lovecraft story. And again, just a mixture of everything you've heard before with some new stuff mixed in with it, don't get me wrong, but it's not bad. There's actually more interviews than just this one. I found out going back and refilming the stuff for the extras here, there were, I think, 2 other commentaries or 2 other interviews here. There are 2 or 3. I can't remember right now. But one of them was, I believe, from the writer. He was talking a little bit about how he got the job writing it. There was another that was, I think, Charles Band. He was talking about the music, how he ended up coming up with the music. Oh, and there was a guy from Fangoria magazine that was there too, talking about his experience seeing Re-Animator for the first time. So yeah, there are actually 4 interviews here as well. So here is something that I thought was going to be pretty interesting. It's a music discussion with a person who did the music for Re-Animator. That would be Richard Band. And as many times as I sat there and watched the extras, they would be playing the music in the background, and everything it got drilled into my head. And it's basically a ripoff of the Psycho theme. It's not exactly like the Psycho theme, but it is a Psycho theme. And it's sort of an upbeat, sort of, faster version of it with a lot more instruments and whatnot. But it's a great, great theme. And even though they ripped off Bernard Herrmann, the guy who did the original Psycho theme, Richard Band at no point said that during this little interview with him. So basically what it is he shows a clip from the film with music only. And then he'll come back on and he'll talk about it and talk about it. Then they'll go back to the film again, music only, and he'll come back and talk about it. So that's what this was. But again, I figured, well, he's going to say something about how he got inspired by Bernard Herrmann. But no, never mentioned it, never, not once, and that was a little disappointing. I was like, okay, if you're going to steal something from somebody, talk about it. Say, hey, this was inspired by or somebody or something like that. But nope, never a word. But still, it was kind of cool to watch the film with just the music and hear him talking about it. So pretty good extra. So the next extra is an interview with Barbara Crampton, who actually plays the girlfriend here in the movie. And she had a big role in the one scene that I'm not going to get into, but if you've seen the movie, it made her famous. And she does talk about that. But I started watching this, and I'm like, okay, here we go again, another interview, stuff I've heard before a dozen times. But this was actually a pretty good interview here. It was filmed in 2015, and she literally goes through her entire career from beginning to up to where she's at now. It's very informative and really interesting, actually. And she got out of acting. I don't know what she did after Re-Animator. I guess she must have done a couple of other things. But then she got out of acting. I think she either married a lawyer or a doctor or somebody, and they went off to do whatever, and she had kids. And so it was like 20, 25 years later, she gets a phone call from one of my favorite directors, Ty West. I believe he's the one that was called her, or he was involved with it somehow, and asked her to come be in a movie called Youre Next. And she said at that point in her career, she was done acting. She hadn't acted in a long time, didn't even think about it, never even thought about returning to acting. And here was somebody asking her to come back to this film. So she's like, okay, well, my kids are grown, I'm not doing anything, I'm working out at a gym in some foreign country somewhere at a hotel or whatever. That's where she got the phone call. And tough life, it sounds like a tough life. And then you get offered a role in Youre Next, which I loved. Youre Next, by the way. It was one of my favorite horror films of that year. I loved it. So she ended up going and doing a bit part in that film, and that, of course, led her into acting again. And she actually was in another film that she funded. These guys wanted to make a movie, brought her the script. They didn't have the money to make it, so she offered up either her own money or she got somebody to make it, and she's in it. And I can't think of the name right now. I actually watched it on Netflix because of this documentary. I'll bring the poster up here. I'll look into it after I get done with this review. So if you want to watch it, you can. It was pretty good. It was a pretty decent film. It was about an old VHS like board game that they used to have out. So anyway, great interview. Really, really informative, and I was surprised by it. Next extra is a Catastrophe of Success. And here, once again, is Stuart Gordon talking about how he got to direct Re-Animator for the 150th time. But this was actually a little bit more detailed. He went into a lot more detail, actually, because he used to run a place called the Organic Theater. And the Organic Theater had all this crazy plays where people were like in space outfits, or they were naked, or I don't know. He used to show all these really weird stuff at his theater. But he went into a whole lot more detail about that theater and how he went from there to make the movie and how he went back to making the theater and all this other stuff. And it wasn't bad. It was one of the better interviews here on the disc, mostly because he did talk about some of the same stuff, but he did finally venture off into some new territory that you hadn't heard before. So that was nice. So now we have another extra called Theater of Blood. And this is an interview with a lyricist. His name's Mark Nutter. And Mark Nutter was writing all the words for the musical for Re-Animator. And they were pushing this pretty hard on this disc, the actual Re-Animator musical. And I don't know if it's still in existence now. I don't know if anyone's doing it anymore, or if this was just all in the past or whatever. But it was a pretty good interview. I mean, he sat there and talked about how he got the job and how he became the person who wrote the script or the words for the songs and stuff for the musical. So yeah, it was a pretty decent little interview. So now we have deleted or extended scenes. Now, I gotta tell you about this, is I didn't watch this. I actually went back and watched disc 2 first because I figured here is all the extras they took out of the movie, and if I wanted to be surprised by any of them, I actually watched disc 2, which I would recommend that you do as well. So if you don't want to be spoiled for the stuff they actually took out of the original film, don't watch this. Go and watch disc 2 first and then come back to this. And this is a deleted scene of a dream sequence that I can't remember what it is now. So, 'cause I watched these extras probably about 2 months ago, and I'm trying to figure out exactly what these were. But this was a dream sequence they talked about. In the second commentary, I know they kept saying how good the dream sequence was and how much they enjoyed it and how they wished it wasn't taken out of the movie. So here it is. This was the actual dream sequence that was in the film that they took out. So now we get to, this is going to be green, so it's going to be disappearing, to integral version of Re-Animator. And what that is, as I was saying before, it's the TV version of Re-Animator. So they had to take out all the bloody stuff to show it on television, but then it cut the length of the movie down to where it was shorter. So all the bloody stuff was out of it, and then they had to add extra scenes in there. So they basically took the deleted scenes they did not show in the original version and put them in the TV version. However, that's not what this is. This is not just the TV version. This is actually the TV version and the actual version. So what they did was they stuck the TV scenes into the movie along with the movie. So it's like they didn't cut out parts of the film to put the TV version of it in there. What they did was, the scene was coming up, and then they stuck the TV version in there, and then they continued the scene, and then it ended with the same scene. So they kind of inserted the deleted scenes, basically, that was supposed to be in the original film, plus the whole thing with Dr. Hill hypnotizing everybody is back in this. Now, watching this version, because this was the original version of Re-Animator before they started editing it. This was what they showed, or the original edit of it. And if it had come out in this form, it would not be the same movie it is today. I can tell you that, because it wasn't as tight. It was not as fun as it was with the version we got. The whole Dr. Hill hypnotizing story was stupid. It really was. It was just boring. It didn't need to be in the movie. There was a lot of unnecessary talking sequences in the film, and they were all cut out. Not necessary. It was not necessary for the film. It dragged the film down a lot. And to tell you the truth, I did not like this version of the film. I just thought it was very slow. It had that second plot in there that did not need whatsoever. But it was fun, though, to kind of see what the original version was and what it ended up as. To tell you how important editing is for a film. It was super important, obviously. But yeah, this is not a good version of the film, but it's still worth watching because it's fascinating to see what they did here. Now, the other extras on this second disc is something called the Guide to Lovecraftian. There's a guy named Chris Lackey, and he is an HP Lovecraft expert. And he's going back telling you everything you want to know about all these HP Lovecraft films. And there is a lot of spoilers here. It even comes up and says, spoiler alert, if you haven't seen any of these movies, he's going to spoil them for you. And he goes back all the way from like the first film up until, Re-Animator. And I didn't really watch this because I did not want to get spoiled. I'd actually like to go back and rewatch some of these HP Lovecraft films. And I actually think it might be kind of a fun thing to do here on the channel. Go back and explore all the HP Lovecraft movies and see how many there were and, review some of them. So I didn't want to get spoiled for that. But it looked like a really good extra from what I could tell. Then there's a extra called Doug Bradley Spine Chillers, Herbert West, Re-Animator. Actor Jeffrey Combs reads HP Lovecraft's original classic short story. So that's what this is. It's him reading the short story to HP Lovecraft. And at last we have this. And this is an actual comic book version of the film, which I showed sort of in the unboxing here. And actually it does have some extra stuff in here that was not in the film. And it's interesting. It's actually a really good comic. The artwork is so-so, but for the most part, it's pretty cool. It's cool to see the extra stuff that actually was not in the actual extra stuff disc or in the movie itself. Overall, this is awesome. Everything is awesome, even though it does repeat itself, but there's ways around that. Like I said, if you don't listen to the commentary or any of that and you just watch the extras, it does not repeat itself too much. So overall, this box set is huge, and it took me a long time to get through all these extras and bring them to you. So I am giving Arrow's Re-Animator a absolutely deserves it. It's an incredible look at Re-Animator. And the packaging is amazing. The comic is cool. The inside of the actual packaging itself, if you haven't watched my unboxing, go back and watch it. The box itself is just awesome. If you want to see how to do a really good box, this is it. So overall, it's an amazing disc. I'm really finally happy that I was able to bring it to you, because I believe this came out in early September, or something like that. Maybe even before that, but I think it was September. So I've been waiting for a whole month and a half now to actually get this review to you guys. And hopefully you liked it, and if you did, make sure you hit that subscribe button, hit that bell so you can be notified for all the horrifying stuff left for 2 more weeks here. If I get this up before before then, it's still 2 more weeks. Or it might be a week, or it might be 3 days. I don't know how long it's going to take me to edit this together. But whatever, if you enjoy all this stuff that we've been doing, show your support, because all you maniacs out there are amazing. And I'll see you next time here in Horror Month, in Box Office Maniacs, and we are all insane.